I want to talk about the Eagles defensive line. Okay, as of right now, in this moment, okay, with no other players being added to the roster, just as is right now, could it be the best defensive line in the NFL? Number two, I kind of want to go over, obviously, our differences from last year to this year. There's plenty of changes here. Slated, we had 11 to 12 free agents, in this defense this year. The Eagles were losing players, and we didn't know if we were going to retain players and all that stuff. How good could this defense be? Just for defensive line wise. I'm not even really talking about the whole entire defense, but I will talk about some things that have happened in the course of this past offseason and all that great stuff. So, yeah, let's get straight into the news.
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Yo, what is going on, guys? Hope everyone's enjoying their weekend this weekend. Definitely some things to talk about here. I'm going to talk about this Eagles defensive line as is right now, clear cut, right now as is. Last year was such a great year. Okay, now we've had our quirks, we've had our discussions on Jonathan Gannon, what he did to this defense, and Howie Roseman built such a defense last year, and a deep one at that, with so much depth. I mean, it was to the point where if Jordan Davis went down, you'd sign Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh, and pretty much saying, Gannon, you really can't fail this at all. You know what I mean? And I felt like the players were bailing out Gannon. This defense was so good personnel wise, the players bailed Gannon out in a lot of games. Okay, this year can't be any worse than last year, but last year wasn't bad because we won 14 games, but we saw clues. I mean, at least for me, I saw clues that there was some things that were missing from this defense when it came to the coaching aspect, which is obviously player usage, obviously not being aggressive enough, taking your foot off the gas, letting offenses breathe, and putting too much pressure on your offense to win games. Even though, I really didn't have an issue with Shane Steichen too much in the offense. I really didn't. There was a few things like, Miles Sanders didn't play enough in the first half of some games. Maybe they underutilized Quez a little bit. Maybe Quez didn't get much of a chance. I don't know. There's I could nitpick at stupid stuff with the offense, but I really didn't have any problem with the offense. It was really this defense I had the most worry for. And with Jonathan Gannon, obviously leaving, going to Arizona, that Super Bowl was a prime example of he was out-coached. He was beaten mentally. He was beaten as a coach. Okay, whether the rumors are true that he threw the game, whether he was giddy after the game, and all the the illegal tampering and all that stuff that was going on this from late last year into this offseason this past year, it really showed Gannon just had no brain for this defense. I mean, really didn't, guys. Just imagine having this defense could have been so more historic last year. Okay, and I think we all know this. You know what I mean? Giving quarterbacks 70 to 90% and completion percentage, and not being creative with your blitzes, and not blitzing enough, and not just doing enough for your players. And obviously at the end of the year, a lot of players started opening their mouth. I think Fletcher Cox opened his mouth during the year. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson after the Super Bowl loss opened his mouth, and there was a lot of clues that some of the players were really not liking how Gannon was using some of these guys, and I think we all agree. Now, we won 14 games, so why am I complaining about it? Well, we may have won 14 games, but at the end of the day, you win your games that you win in the regular season. Once you get to the playoffs, it's a clean slate. The regular season does not matter once you get to the playoffs. It means nothing. I mean, you lose one game in the playoffs, you're done. You know what I mean? So I was nervous about Jonathan Gannon every single game. He was letting teams come back through, giving offenses so much life, and then putting pressure on the Eagles offense, and limiting this defense to letting teams score field goals on us, just easy points to get. You know what I mean? I understand giving up a field goal is better than giving up a touchdown, but at the end of the day, I felt like he was just so weak. Just imagine if you actually had a defensive coordinator with a brain that can create ways to get pressure on quarterbacks and can be creative. Just be creative with the defense. It looked too bold, too plain. And, you're using Hassan Reddick out of coverage. I mean, in coverage so much during the year. He had 19.5 sacks. I mean, it's insane. I mean, even to go through this roster, going into this year, there was a lot of players. We had 11 to 12 slated, free agents going into this year. So we were like, man, we're going to lose. We're going to really, this offseason was, with our defense especially, was really about what players can we retain? And I didn't honestly know what was going to happen, but obviously redoing Slay's deal, Bradbury coming back, which was huge. I'm just talking about the secondary just because it involves what our the pieces to our defensive line and the whole defense in general. I knew that Edwards was going to leave. I knew that Kaiser White maybe would have signed back, but I wasn't sure. And I really wasn't a big fan of Kaiser White. And I already knew we had Nakobe Dean. Marcus Epps was gone. Javon Hargrave was obviously the biggest, I say between Chauncey and, obviously Javon Hargrave was the biggest loss. $21 million a year at 31 years old, it's a big contract that the Eagles were just not going to get. Defensive tackle market was pretty much $20 to $21 million a year or over that. You know what I mean? So you started getting players back. Fletcher Cox came back, which was great. You know what I mean? So Fletcher Cox isn't the same Fletcher Cox anymore. Okay. Fletcher Cox had 8 sacks last year. Okay. So it was a pretty good year for him. But, he was complaining earlier in the season that, he was playing way too much. He was playing over 70% of the snaps. He is not that player anymore. So once, Jordan Davis got hurt, they brought Linval Joseph, they brought Adam Kinsuin. Then he was playing between like 30 to 45%, which was good. More of a rotation, keeping guys fresh. And, you can conserve more energy in these games and these players could do well. I mean, 4 players with double-digit sacks is just insane from last year. Okay. You know what I mean? So obviously you draft Jalen Carter, you have Milton Williams that, is getting better every single year, which I'm not the big fan of Milton Williams like a lot of fans are, but he has been playing better. His statistics have been going up every single year. So he is getting better. Kadavius Street was another really good signing, especially with Milton Williams now, because both of those players, Kadavius Street's probably like a 3 to 6 sack type guy this year. Him and Milton Williams could play defensive tackle and defensive end, so they can move. Kadavius Street's good because they can move him around a little bit, which is good for your defense to play multiple positions. They drafted Moro Ojomo in the 7th round, and he's not, he's shown flashes of being very disruptive. He's not really great against the run, but he's not really a great consistent pass rush. He was supposed to be a late 5th to a 6th round pick. The Eagles pretty much thought Howie Roseman pretty much thought they got a steal with Moro Ojomo, so that's another guy that they maybe want to bring along a little bit. So I think defensive tackle is really good right now. I think there's really good depth at that position. Now, we'll go to defensive end before I talk about the rookies and obviously the guys we drafted on the defensive line, which is great too. So, Hassan Reddick is, this is a guy that's had double-digit sacks 3 seasons. This is I think, what is he, the 3rd or 4th player to do it in NFL history? I mean, no one's done this. I mean, I've even heard people talk about that, Hassan Reddick's overrated, and I'm just like, how is he overrated when he can, he has a milestone like that in his career? And not to mention, he came to Philadelphia for literally, a cheap contract. I mean, he took a huge pay cut, and compared to what other teams, I think he just always wanted to play in Philadelphia. Obviously played at Temple. He was the pick right before Derek Barnett in 2017. And it was really fun to watch. Hassan Reddick. It was fun to watch him last year, and I think he's going to have even a better year this year. He probably would have had. I see if they didn't put him in coverage so much, because literally early in the season they had Hassan Reddick in coverage way too much. Okay, and I understand maybe you're looking at Arizona tape, maybe you're looking at tape when he was in Arizona and he was obviously in coverage, and he was a nice balance between outside linebacker to being a defensive end. I totally understand that. I get it. But you need this guy on the edge like full time, especially this year. I think this year Hassan Reddick needs to be on the edge full time. And I think he's going to play really well. And I think he could have had like 26 sacks. I'm not even kidding. He would have had a lot of sacks this year if they didn't have much in coverage. But he's done a good job, so I can't really complain about it. Obviously, Josh Sweat's another one with double-digit sacks this year, and he just gets better and better every single year. Brandon Graham, coming off an Achilles injury and putting the numbers that he put up, first time in his career. Obviously, between Brandon Graham's career in Philadelphia, he was a late bloomer. I mean, sometimes guys just have careers like that, but coming off of an Achilles at an older age is not an easy thing to get out of. This isn't, I think an Achilles is obviously worse than an ACL, because coming off of that, you never know what's going to happen. So, 12 sack season, did a really good job, and obviously more depth is these guys are more, primed for more rest, and between 4 to 5 plays, these guys can rotate, and it's absolutely great. So obviously loved him. Drafting Nolan Smith was definitely a big one here, which I, obviously loved. And now you have Derek Barnett still on this team, which Derek Barnett, I'm not asking him to do too much at all. Really, if Derek Barnett's playing for himself on a contract right now, it's just going to be, as long as he's somewhat disruptive, I don't care. But I think we're pretty much going to be off of the Derek Barnett train after this year. I don't see the Eagles re-signing him, a third time, because he's been signed twice already. He's coming off his 2-year deal after this year, so that's going to be really interesting. So I feel like, the defensive line. I think you have a really good defensive line. I think it's still going to be a top 3. I think it's still going to be really good, and it's really the final piece of the puzzle is Sean Desai. That's just what it is. Now, because you lost Hargrave, was it a loss? Yes, it was. And I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't. Okay. Now, obviously, Hargrave wasn't a good. He was horrible against the run, no doubt. He was obviously more of a pass rusher than a run stuffer. But now, obviously, I forgot Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis, the most important piece to our defensive line. I think he is the most important piece. Because he commands those double teams and makes everyone successful around him. I totally forgot about Jordan Davis. You know what I mean? So with him and now getting Jalen Carter and getting Nolan Smith, now people are telling me, well, you can't really rate this defensive line to be the best because Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith haven't done anything yet. We haven't seen them do anything. We haven't seen them hit another jersey. We haven't seen them in a regular season game. And I'm going to say this right now as an opinion. I think... I'm not just trying to blow smoke up everyone's ass. Like, I think Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter are going to produce day one. I think we're going to get a difference maker. And I'm telling you right now, I think with Jalen Carter, he is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I feel like Jalen Carter is going to start next to Jordan Davis this year. I think Nolan Smith, I don't think he'll start. I think he'll be in that second rotation at defensive end. I think him and Sweat will be the opposition. Obviously in the second rotation, like I said, it will be Graham and obviously Hassan Reddick with that first rotation. So I feel like both of these guys are going to produce highly well. Some might not agree with me, and I totally respect that, but the work that's been putting in, what I've been seeing so far, and yes, we're not in full pads, we're just, we don't have mini camp, we've only done OTAs, and that's pretty much it. And obviously for the rookies, there was rookie mini camp for a little bit, but I feel like they're going to, I think Carter is going to have 9 sacks this year. I think he's going to make a lot of noise. And I think Nolan Smith might have maybe a 6-sack season this year. I think Nolan Smith is going to be very interesting because there are so many things they could do with him. Because he has that 4.3 speed, because he has that really fast, cut on a dime, change of direction, and they can use him. And this is a guy that you could put him at outside linebacker with Nakobe Dean if you really want to. So if the Eagles don't feel comfortable with, Nicholas Morrow, Davion Taylor, some of these other guys that they have, which I'm trying to see if they really need to add another piece to that position, they could do that too. But Nolan Smith is going to be very interesting. Sean Desai loves those defensive ends that go into cover. They love those guys. And I think Sean Desai has had a lot of experience with that, and he's had, he was the defensive coordinator and a defensive quality control coach under Vic Fangio and a defensive coordinator for the Bears. You know what I mean? So Nolan Smith, they could do so many different things with him because his athleticism is off the charts. So it really depends on how they use him. And like I said, Sean Desai is the final piece of the puzzle. He is. I don't think it could get any worse than last year. I mean, trust me, there were some games we almost threw down the drain because we took our foot off the gas defensively. You know, we couldn't get a stop on third. You know what I mean? He played too cautious on certain downs. Didn't know how to use certain players. Players started to kind of, you know, we were winning, so obviously winning heals everything. You don't really care when you're winning too much. You're not going to call people out when you're winning too much. Obviously, when you start losing, you know, it's a different story, but we had a successful season last year. We just didn't hit the main goal, was winning a Super Bowl, and I think that's when Jonathan Gannon was exposed as a coach, his integrity, his his brain of how he should be thinking and how he should be coaching his players during the biggest game of the year. Yeah, when you get beat on the same play 2 times on that jet motion on each side, yeah, you could put, obviously there's players that are involved in it, but if you don't see it coming, and like maybe the players see it, but they're in a certain formation defensively that the coach is telling them to do, it's on the coach at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, we were waiting for the Eagles offense to get the ball back. The Eagles were up by 10 points at half. There is no excuse for it. You know, not only the defense was to blame, but special teams was a big blame too. I mean, you know, like that's why we're trying to get a new punter right now. Hopefully Legatron gets the job. So I really, and trust me, I don't just hype it up. Like, I really feel like these guys are going to have a really good year. I think Carter's going to have a big year. I think Nolan Smith's going to have a big year. I think there's a lot of good things to take out of it. I really do. I'm not, like I said this a million times. I'm not trying to, trust me, if I send something I don't like, I will freaking tell you I don't like it. Trust me. Do I feel like they can add another defensive lineman through free agency? Yes. I feel like they can. I feel like they will. Just think about it, really, because when you think about it, defensive end-wise, right? Defensive tackle, I think there's a lot of depth. I think it's really good. I think you're going to compensate for Javon Hargrave not being here. I really think you are. I have really high confidence in Jalen Carter really just tearing it up and being violent, being the violent man I know he is on the field. You know, what it's going to come down to now is the coaching aspect, and what it's going to come down to as how Sean Desai is going to be using these players, and how, you know, how are they going to run? Like, you know what I used to love last year with the Philadelphia Eagles? Running the stunts. Every time we ran a stunt, it was a sack. I swear to God, every time the Eagles ran one stunt, it equaled a sack every single time. And there was just times where Gannon just didn't run stunts. If you're not going to blitz, run some stunts. I mean, do something. You know what I mean? Like, just give me something here. So when you look at the defensive ends in rotation, right? So you're going to have Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham. That's first rotation. You're going to have Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, right? And then you're going to have Derek Barnett and who else? Patrick Johnson. I don't know who else. I feel like they need to add at least one more guy for that third rotation. And I don't know why people are questioning me in every single video on how he's not going to get this guy. Why do people believe that Howie's going to get this one and get that one and get the... There's 4 open roster spots, guys. And if I was to think as Howie Roseman right now, because he values the trenches so much... Yeah, we lost on Leonard Floyd. We lost on Frank Clark. The Eagles aren't signing somebody for some reason here, okay? Whether it's just going to be a wait-and-see approach. Yannick Ngakoue just got a new agent in Drew Rosenhaus right now, so he's ready to go sign with a team and maybe a 2-year deal or something like that. You know, I feel like Yannick Ngakoue could be there. Jadeveon Clowney could be there. So I would watch for that. I feel like the Eagles will get a defensive line before they'll go after linebacker, or before if they even want to add a safety. I feel like this defensive line, who can complain? You know, Ndamukong Suh could probably sign later on. You never know. You know what I mean? Down the road, you know, so it's on the table. You know what I mean? It's on the table for some of these guys to, you know, Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. I thought they helped tremendously with this defense. There's no doubt. When we lost Jordan Davis. Then once Jordan Davis came back, it was even more depth and more players that, Gannon had everything at his disposal. Remember in 2021 as a defensive coordinator for his first year? Remember at the end of the year, third quarter of the year, where he talked about he had an excuse because he didn't have enough players for his scheme or didn't have enough talent for his scheme. Then come 2022, literally Howie Roseman gave him everything, and still couldn't get it done. And still, and just the defense ran for him. He didn't run the defense. The defense ran him. Okay? That's the way it went. It was so bad in 2021 where Jonathan Gannon had to get feedback from his players on how to use them. I mean, that's how bad it is. Players are going up to him saying, hey, coach, I think you should use me like this. Like, that's what happened. And that's how embarrassing it is. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with getting feedback from your players, but like, it was a lot. There was multiple players, Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay. There was a whole bunch of players that went up to him. This is how you should use me. This is that, I mean, it's just insane, dude. Like, I don't think this guy had a brain. I really don't. The players bailed him out and bailed him out and bailed him out. So at the end of the day, we haven't hit training camp yet. We haven't hit full pads yet. We haven't had joint practices yet. We haven't had preseason games yet. Just give it time. But I feel good about Sean Desai. What he talked about, the competition is his favorite, to see the best out of his players, okay, to create ways to get pressure on quarterbacks, that he wants a violent defense, to mentally and violently disrupt quarterbacks. I mean, it was music to my ears. It was like, I mean, it was great. It was great to hear that. You know what I mean? I felt so much comfort. But like I said, I have to see it. I got to see it. You know what I mean? So you have a Vic Fangio disciple, apprentice, pretty much coaching this defense this year. You know what I mean? So that's all I really got to say about it. You know what I mean? That's my rant on it. This is all opinion. This isn't, this is just what I think. You know what I mean? I the defensive line in general, just plain slate defensive line, like this defensive line, it's going to be crazy. It is going to be nuts. I think it's going to be the best. I think it's going to be the best. And trust me, if Sean Desai knows how to use these linebackers, knows how to do these stunts, blitzing, I mean, trust me. I mean, at least we know we have a guy that blitzes a lot. At least 22.6% of the time his blitz rate was when he was a coordinator in 21. And trust me, Sean Desai did not have a roster like this in 21 with the Bears. I mean, not even close. Not even 25% close to what he has now. Compared to now. Forget it. It's insane. So let me know what you guys think about this defensive line. What would you add? Would you add another player to this defensive line? What do you think of it as this defensive line as a whole? Do you think they could, I don't know if they're going to have 70 sacks this year. I'm not trying to compare it to last year if they're going to have 70 sacks. I think they could have had a lot more. They probably could have had 80, 85. I mean, they probably would have had another 10, 15 sacks. I'm not even kidding, dude. I mean, last year, there were so many players that were underutilized, at least early in the season. They could have done so much more. And you know what? It could be an under 70 sack season, but is Terrell Edmonds going to get more picks this year? There's so much more, he's going to use these corners more in your face. You know what I mean? Like he wants to use these corners differently, than Gann would just push him back 10 yards off the line when, Terry McLaurin's running 100% at you and you have to react to the break of his route. You set up these players to fail last year. You set them up to fail. There's just certain things that just annoyed me. Like, how are you supposed to react to a receiver that's running, a good receiver that's running 100%, that's running 100 miles an hour in front of you? You're standing there, and you have to react and start running at the break of his route. You're going to get beat every single time. You know what I mean? Trust me, there's a lot that pissed me off. A lot pissed me off. So if you last this long in this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video as well for more Eagles content every single day. We do have a special guest on Tuesday at 8 o'clock for more Eagles Talk Tuesday. So I'll let you guys know on the update on that. You'll see some posts on that. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Shakes, what up? Follow us. Peace out, guys. Peace.